One.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 8th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. My name is Catherine Halpern, and I'm Chair of the Planning Board of the Town of Chatham. Please note that this meeting is being conducted by remote participation only, and in just a few moments, I'll give you some points about that. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. Also, I do need to ask if anyone is recording the meeting. It's all right to record the meeting, but you do not need to notify the chair. I'll give you a few moments in case your phone is muted. So I just want to go through a few points about our remote participation procedure. This meeting of the Chatham Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation only in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternative means of public access via Microsoft Teams and also by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID number is 460-426-698#. And as I mentioned, you can also join the meeting online using Microsoft Teams by using the link in the agenda that's posted on the town website. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. And as I mentioned, the meeting is being recorded and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. A few other points of procedure for our remote participation. We will begin the meeting with a roll call of all planning board members. And if you are recognized by the chair, members of the public, non-board members, would you kindly, before you begin speaking, kindly repeat your name? And also, if you're connected by telephone, please repeat the last 4 digits of your phone number. We just want to be sure to be able to identify all the speakers in the meeting. And as I mentioned, after an agenda item has been discussed by the planning board, I will recognize members of the public or citizens, non-board members who may have questions or comments. Again, we do need to be somewhat formal because of the remote participation procedure. So there should only be one speaker at a time, and that should be the speaker recognized by the chair. All votes taken tonight by the planning board will be taken by roll call vote. And at the end of the meeting, we'll close the meeting with a verbal confirmation and we will note the time of adjournment. So let's begin with the roll call of board members. Art Sprue, are you present?
Art Sprue, present.
And Tom Gagan, have you joined us yet? We anticipate Tom will join us, but he doesn't seem to be connected yet. Bob Dubus?
Bob Dubus, here.
Bob Wirtschafter?
Bob Wirtschafter, here.
Roger Griffin? Roger, you might be muted.
Yep, I'm here. My mute button was not working. I'm here.
Okay, great. And thank you, Roger. I understand Warren Chain will not be joining us this evening. And as I mentioned, I'm Catherine Halpern and I am present. Let me also ask before we begin if any board members need to recuse themselves from any matters on tonight's agenda. All right, let's go ahead. The first item on the agenda are the minutes for the October 25th meeting. And I'll just ask if any board members have any corrections, additions, amendments to the minutes for October 25th. There being none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved by Bob.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Roger Griffin, I'll second that.
Thank you. Let's do a roll call vote to approve the minutes for October 25th. Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
is Tom Gagan joined us yet? I don't think so.
No.
Okay, Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halper, and I also approve the minutes for October 25th. Next item on the agenda is an approval not required matter for 53 Raccoon Run and 48 Salt Marsh Way. Do I have a presenter for this matter?
Good afternoon, Thad Eldridge here.
Thank you, Thad. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thad Eldridge of East Southeast, representing the Sampsons. They went to their neighbors to propose a land swap. There's a 1,755 square foot triangle coming out of the Sampsons property. You got it there. And then a 1,755 square foot four-sided figure coming out of the Mendelssohn's property for the Sampsons' benefit. They're proposing a garage down below, and this will enable them to propose a conforming garage. It's equal areas, the lots, even though they're all broken apart because of land court, specifically the Sampsons lot. They do both conform to the zoning bylaw, and it's an even land swap. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Thad. So let's go through the board, just see if you have any questions or comments for Thad on this matter. Art Spru?
This is Art Sprue. Thad, I think the lot 31, which includes lot 14 and buffer, that lot 14 and buffer extends down through Raccoon Run quite a bit, but I didn't see all the information associated with the lot lines and that, and it didn't extend all the way to the end. Just a suggestion that you might want to include that in the overall plan that's being approved. The only other comment I have is add a note, as I've asked in the past, the planning board endorsement of this plan is not a determination of conformance with zoning regulations. Other than that, I have no comments.
Thank you, Art. Good reminder. And Tom Gagan, have you joined the meeting yet? I don't see that you have. Bob Dubus, any questions for Thad?
No, Bob Dubus here. I have no questions. I looked at the plan. It looks fine with me.
And Bob Wirtschafter,
No, I have nothing yet either.
Roger Griffin,
No, Roger Griffin, no questions, no concerns.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I agree, it looks pretty straightforward. So may I have a motion that we would endorse this approval not required plan?
Bob Dubus will make that motion.
And may I have a second, please?
Art
Roger
Sprue,
Griffin,
second.
second motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote to endorse the A&R plan as presented. Art Spru?
Just one clarification, Catherine.
Oh, yes, with the
Add
amendment.
the note that I had requested.
Yes, with the addition of the note that Arthur has requested, which is our standard.
Okay.
And thank you, Arthur. Thanks for
All
the
right, Art Sprue, approve.
And Tom Gagan, have you joined? All right, Bob Dubus?
Bob Dubus. All right, I didn't mean, I meant to include yours when I made that motion, so I approve.
Okay, great. And Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approved.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we endorse the A&R as presented with the addition of our standard note as Arthur mentioned. All right, next
Thanks so
on
much.
the agenda is a pre-application for a site plan review. And just a reminder, this is a pre-application, This is regarding 784 Main Street. And what we wish to accomplish at this pre-application is to review the preliminary site plan and to have a conversation with the applicant and to let them know anything that we feel may need to be added or amended for them to go through their formal site plan review process with us. And also we will need to decide as a board whether a site visit is warranted and or a public hearing. So let's go ahead. This is regarding 784 Main Street and 782 Main Street in Chatham. And Mr. Zender, are you presenting or?
Madam Chairman, I can begin the presentation of the board.
Sure, whatever the applicant prefers, however you prefer to go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you all. Again, can you all hear me okay and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Ben Zender and I'm an attorney in Orleans, and I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property at 784 Main Street. And with me is Thad Eldridge, whom you were just speaking with, who is our project engineer, and as well as Leslie Schneeberger, who's our project architect. And we can answer any questions you have. Just to give you a little bit of a background on this, this project came before the planning board previously. We ultimately withdrew the project from consideration by the planning board because we required certain zoning relief that we didn't think we were going to get. Most notably a structural variance for sideline setbacks, as well as a use variance for the number of units. So Leslie and Thad have revised the project to eliminate the sideline setback nonconformities, and we have discussed the project with staff, had great feedback from staff in the town, and Thad has now presented the application for the preliminary review by this board. Once this is filed with the planning board on a formal basis, and hopefully once we've obtained site plan review approval, we would then be going in front of the zoning board of appeals for the requisite permit for the multiple family dwelling under the zoning bylaw, as well as a permit to alter a pre-existing non-conforming use, meaning the number of units in the property, and possibly, depending on the interpretation of the zoning code, we have a preliminary informal determination from Mr. Briggs, although it's not in writing. We asked him to specifically not put it in writing because we're trying to understand the timing of the applications, that we may require a variance for the number of units that's being proposed on the project. By way of a very, very, sky-high overview, there is right now a commercial space in the front building with a single residential unit on the second floor, and there were 4 apartments in the rear building, and the proposal is to reduce the number of units to 3 in the rear building and keep the front building as it is. And with that sort of very, very brief overview, I'd love to turn it over to Thad so he can give you a little bit more information about the buildings and where they are, et cetera. And Leslie can answer any questions about the design. And thank you all.
Thank you, Beth. So Thad, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, Thad Eldridge, East Southeast. And the important element that Ben glossed over, that there's going to be commercial space on the first floor of the rear building. There'll be greater than 50% commercial area on the site in compliance with the bylaw. So the proposal is very similar to the last time that this was before you. We have an ingress on the easterly side of the property that leads back to a parking area and then swings back to a common ingress egress coming back out to Route 28. We have a handicapped parking space that will be added out front, and in the rear we have a handicapped parking space with the ramping necessary to get into the commercial space. The drainage will be upgraded. There's currently a catch basin out there that's marginal operation, and it'll continue to be on the sewer. If there are more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
This is Catherine, and Leslie, I'll just ask you if you wanted to present as well before we go to questions. You can handle questions from you at once.
Sure, thank you. As that said, the building is very similar in shape and form and aesthetics to what was before you before. The differences are it is conforming to property setbacks rather than the previous version had an existing nonconformity that was being used. It is commercial space, office space on the first floor, 3 apartments. Thank you, Katie. 3 apartments on the second floor, and storage for both the office and apartments in the basement ground level. This has been to historic and I'm sorry, HBDC, where it was approved. So the shape and size and everything of the building has gotten that far, and now we're moving on to the next.
Great. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
This is Catherine. Before we go through and see the comments and questions from board members, I just wanted to remind everyone of some of the standard things that we ask for and that we consider at a formal site plan review. And these are all summarized in the staff report. And firstly, so I'll just review them briefly for the benefit of the public and the board. We do look at all of our standard site plan review criteria, which includes adequacy and arrangement of vehicular traffic access and circulation, adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian traffic access and circulation, location arrangement, appearance and sufficiency of off-street parking and loading, location arrangement, size, design, and general site compatibility of buildings, lighting, and signs, adequacy of stormwater and drainage, adequacy of water supply and sewage disposal facilities, adequacy, type, and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping. In the case of an apartment complex or other multiple dwelling units, the adequacy of usable open space for play areas and informal recreation. Also, protection of adjacent or neighborhood properties against any noise, glare, unsightliness, or other objectionable features. We also look at adequacy of fire lanes and other emergency zones, and special attention to the adequacy of structures, roadways, and landscaping in areas with susceptibility to ponding, flooding, and/or erosion. A few other points mentioned in the staff report, and again, these are all standards that we look at a formal site plan review. Evidence by the applicant of his title or interest in the property, names and addresses of abutting property owners, an estimate of cost of site improvements, including but not limited to the following: paving, drainage, retaining walls, landscaping, refuge storage, sidewalks, handicap access, outdoor lighting facilities. We've already received an outline of the proposed use of the property, location and dimensions of all existing and proposed buildings, and I think that's already been provided, outdoor lighting, landscaping plan, and then of course the ruled box and date for board signatures. So that's just a brief summary of some of the standard things we look at. With that being said, let's go through the board, see if you have any questions for Ben or Leslie or Thad, or any comments or additional items you'd like to see at the formal site plan review. Art Sprue.
Thank you, Catherine. This is Art Sprue. I think probably my first and main concern is try to deal with some of that parking, which is both on the east and west side of 782 Main Street. If you take a look at it, a vehicle is going to be entering in from the east side. They could enter in from the west side too, but if you enter in from the east side, if they call it like a parallel park there, they're not going to want to be parked up real close to the building, because that's where the driver's side is, and they'll be trying to exit there. You set aside 10 feet for that. Now, if you take a look at the width that's there, you say it's 22 feet. You have 10 feet for the parking, you got 3 feet for a sidewalk, you got a buffer strip that's there on the other side of the sidewalk, that's 3 feet. That leaves you 6 feet for a drive. That's not adequate for a safe entrance drive. So I think those 3 parking spaces are going to have an issue there of getting through in a detailed plan. Now, when you go over to the flip side, on the west, that that has a 26.5-foot width there, 10 foot for parking. Again, the same issue with the parallel parking there. But a vehicle, you take the 10 feet out, that's 16.5 feet for width of drive. That's a 2-way drive, and actually the zoning calls for that to be 20 feet minimum for a 2-way drive. So both sides in here with the parking place there, which is, it's not really there today, is going to run into some challenging issues. So I would say that that would be something that should be carefully looked at by the applicant and their engineer when they come back. Just going down my list here, when I was out there just taking a look, there's commercial vehicles that are parked in the parking areas there. I'm just wondering, are those going to be staged there and be left overnight? It's just something that I'm just interested in understanding, because the residential needs to at least take up, I think for 4 units, that's 8 parking spaces. The addition of a parking space in the front by 782, that's not the best place in the world to have a parking place, but I understand what you're trying to do. I think you need to address stormwater in that location, since you're adding additional paved area. It would not be appropriate to take and run all of that down the driveway to the rear. It should be picked up before it starts to get an overflow through a driveway access. And then the other thing is our site plan review calls for a buffer whenever commercial is adjacent to residential. So I believe there's 3 residential properties in the rear. So there needs to be a buffer identified and shown on the landscaping plans. So that's something that you should be identifying and demonstrating to us. You're showing a retaining, this is the one question I have of the engineer and the applicant, you're showing a retaining wall in the back. Right now, there's a fence in the back, it slopes up, and there's a fence there, and it provides some sort of a buffering or separation from a view from the residential properties. If you take and put a retaining wall there, I understand you're trying to make a level area in the back there, but are you going to put a fence back on top of the retaining wall or something else there for view-related issues? That's just something that I would be looking at from a privacy standpoint. And then, Catherine, you mentioned all the other things that we look at, lighting and things like that. We want to make sure that you submit the details on the type of fixture, make sure it complies with our cutoff design. That's about what I have for right now. Just some of the things I'd be looking for in the formal application for this.
Great. Thank you, Art. And Bob Dubus?
Bob Dubus says some of the same issues that Art has on the parking. There's going to be now two office spaces in there where one was before. And I'm just wondering how the parking's going to weigh out there. I am in favor of the concept, though, with apartments instead of the condos. Just the normal everyday occurrence to answer all the questions. But like you said, the parking, and I don't have too much problem with the drainage. I do have some about how tight it is around the buildings for driving. But basically, I'm sure that they probably can come up with something for the vinyl. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Bob Wirtschafter?
Yeah, same concerns with parking. I think there's 6 residential spots. There's 3 apartments, not 4 apart.
Right.
But it's still takes up a big chunk of the spaces that are there. Are these? It says commercial. Do we know that this is office, or could it be some other kind of commercial space? I mean, if it's retail, then we're going to need, a different. Then I have some serious concerns about parking and people coming into this space and backing up on lots of traffic in here. Then I really think that this is not enough. If it's people that come, for an office, they park and they leave their car, and then at the end of the day they go out. That's a different level of contact between cars. So I'd have less concern about that. But I don't know whether the site plan is going to specify the actual type of use so that we get a better idea of the parking requirements. Yeah, I have some serious concern about where you're going to put the snow on some of the the walkways and things, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of space to throw, especially where the ramp is. But it's a little hard to see at this size, but we do. It's very tightly fit, and I wasn't going to. I didn't think I really needed another site visit, but I think I do want to see how that sits and what kind of space there is to even put get a bicycle or anything or whatever else may want to be left out there. So anyway, those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Madam Chairman, excuse me, Bob Douglas. We were talking about 3 apartments. There are 4 apartments on the property, correct?
That's my understanding. There's 3 in the 784 building proposed, and then there's still 1 in 782.
Correct. That was what
my mistake, Bob and Art. Yeah, altogether there are 8. So my mistake. I was thinking.
No, I just want to clarify so that we all know that parking is definitely an issue with this piece of property, and the commercial part. I don't know if both buildings are under one commercial entity, or if they're going to be 2 commercial entities there, and that there'll be even more traffic going through there. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. No, thanks for.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob and Roger Griffin. Questions, points?
Yeah.
Resolved?
Yes, I do. Rather than going through the questions that have been asked and the things we've talked about, I guess I have a couple other things. On the 3 units that we are looking at right now, I think everybody will agree that obviously rental housing in Chatham is like gold, and each and every unit we can add on or develop or renovate, what have you, is the utmost importance at this point. So I'm looking at these units. What are the square footage of each of the 3-bedroom units or 2-bedroom units? I couldn't detect what the square footage is.
Thad or Leslie, would you like to answer, Roger?
I have to say it's been a bit since we submitted this, and I don't have the square footage of each actual unit. We'll follow up with the planning board and can certainly have it.
I was just curious. When looking at this, space looks kind of tight, and
It is.
I'm thinking,
They're definitely a small size.
Right. And I'm looking and thinking that again, we're talking about the affordable housing or any rental units available. We could have families here, and I'm thinking it's a 2-bedroom. And there's only 1 bathroom. I mean, I thought we would have had a bath and a half. Is there a way of maybe squeezing something like that in there?
Certainly look at that and see.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing too is I realize it's the same thing. Again, I maybe am just selfishly looking to me. Anyone who's renting something in Chatham, we can do the very best we can to make it, a great place to live in, a great place to stay. I'm also looking. You've got 3 apartments in this building. We have 1 apartment in 782, and maybe there's going to be a relationship or not, I don't know, and how that's going to work out in the future. But I'm thinking there's also no washer and dryer hookup, so that would there be anything in the basement, or how would that be done? Or is that even considered? Maybe not.
It is something for the owner to consider. The way the building
Right,
is divided, there
Great.
is dedicated space for each unit in the basement.
Great, so there'd be access from the building on the outside. The other thing would be the thing on the storage if we have people living in the 4 units. Now, I'm not sure where the 782 for that apartment, where they're going to be storing things or what have you. But again, for bikes or anything like that, is there going to be any outside storage, or would that be, how would that be worked out?
So there's
We probably have to
dedicated,
look at some.
there's dedicated
Pardon me?
basement space that you can see right there that you can get into from the
Right,
outside.
so
for
they
each
would have
unit.
access to,
And-
right, so they would have access from the outside as well. They have access from the outside as well.
Correct. And there's dedicated
Okay.
space for outdoor space for the apartments.
Right, right. Now, the other thing too is we're looking at, now, if we had the apartment in 782, and we've got 3 in 784. Again, there could be families or kids. If the apartment is 782, is that kind of access to maybe that general play space that 784 may have, or is that going to be completely separate, or?
I don't know the division of the property. I can't speak to what area is allowed to use what area.
Again, I really, no, I understand that you can't know the detail. Yeah, I guess the only other question I have at this point, rather than being redundant, I'm looking at, we talked about the landscaping plan. I think that obviously with landscaping, I'd be very curious on that, because I think every resident in town now is looking about who has a meter, who doesn't have a meter, and how are we going to water it. I think the more we know about the landscaping plan, I think going forward as a planning board, I think the more we know, the better. Those are just some of my general things, and I think other than that, I agree with Bob Orchard. I think we could use, now that we have all these facts, I think we could use another visit to the site. I think it would be a big help for everybody. And other than that, I have no more questions at this time.
Okay, great. This is Catherine. Thank you, Roger. So I'm just gonna reiterate some of the concerns that have come up. It is a tight space, and there are concerns about parking and vehicular access, the width of the ingress and egress. So those issues definitely need to be resolved. Also, I do think we need to clarify the use. It is commercial use on the first floor of the back building of 784, but we do need to know exactly what type of use that's going to be, so that we can consider the parking and the access properly. And just and also, if the properties are linked, it might make a difference. Is it the same ownership or different ownership? Or different use, different company using the commercial space, because that might also make a difference in how we can evaluate the issues of access, both vehicular and pedestrian, as well as the parking situation. I did just want to mention, just not to put a damper on our spirits, but just regarding the apartments, there's been no mention of affordable or attainable apartments, just apartments. Because you're using that word, we would understand that they're not condominiums. However, with regard to use, just a reminder to the board that we can't really, adjudicate ownership. We just need to look at the use. So it is possible, anyway, we can't draw any conclusions about how the apartments will be leased or owned at this point. Just a reminder to the board about that. If there's no other questions from
I have one, Catherine.
yes, please go ahead.
It's actually along that line. I think there's in terms of use, and I
Yes.
know we can't directly do this, but I think some mention of it or a clearer understanding of it will certainly help with the neighbor issues as
Sure.
to whether this would be 12-month leases or not specified. And so I know that, you know, at this point, we may not want to have the ability to tell you, you guys, what to do here, but I do think the neighbors need to have should have a clearer indication of what they're in for, based on what's going to be in the deeds or whatever other restrictions could be written into this. So that I'm not the lawyer. I'm
Right.
just giving some advice that I think would help this situation.
All right. But in general, I'll just summarize that I think I'm speaking for the board where we're saying we just want a little more clarification about the use, both the commercial use and the residential use, as well as the parking needs some work and the adequacy of the vehicular and pedestrian access needs some work. And so we need more information about all of that, as well as all the standard things about landscaping and lighting, etc. So with that, if there's no other comments from the board, and I don't see that Tom Gagan.
You know, Catherine, it's
Yeah.
Catherine, it's Roger. I just had one statement to make. I was
Go
not
ahead.
implying we're actually trying to talk about saying this is going to be affordable housing. All I'm saying is that any rental units that we have in town, I just think those are some of the
Yeah.
applications, some of the things that we should be making sure we can do our best to make sure those things are included. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I just have to make reminders to the board about certain things.
I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Roger. Thank you. So if there's no other comments or questions from the board, I will open the floor to any comments or questions from the public regarding this pre-application. And maybe Katie, if I could ask you to help me see if any hands are raised and identify them.
Sure. Madam Chair, I only see one hand raised from Thad.
All right, Thad, please go ahead.
And if there is anybody from the public, I'm happy to stop talking and let them speak during this time. I realize that everybody has a negative feeling about condominiums. I happen to be sitting in my office at the Kendrick Corners condominium, where there are 6 rented apartments, year-round rentals, that are all condominium units, just happen to be owned by the same person. So it doesn't always have to have the negative inference. The parking areas are actually used now as parallel parking spaces up against the building, and they haven't had issues. The retaining wall in the back is to drop everything down, and that will increase the privacy with the neighbors. And yes, there are 4 apartments, so 8 spaces would be needed for those 4. Given the size of the apartments, which ranges somewhere between 750 and 900 square feet for each one, these would be more workforce housing, and we could expect to double some of the parking with the commercial. They're currently proposing an office space at the first floor level of the rear building. We will work on snow removal. And as far as outdoor recreation, we're a stone's throw from 2 playgrounds.
Right.
It makes more sense to, when I was a child and lived at the Kendrick Corners condominium, I would go to a half-mile down the road to those playgrounds quite often. I think that the folks here could certainly do the same. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Thad.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Dubus.
I noticed that one of us asked to have a site visit. I thought it was a good idea, and I think it's a good idea to have a site visit where maybe they could mark out some of the drive-through areas and the parking areas with some dots or something for us to physically look at to see what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. I actually agree. And we can vote on that in just a moment. But a couple of board members have mentioned a site visit would be useful, and I agree. But before we go to that, I just again want to ask if there's any members of the public who would like to ask questions or make comments on this pre-application.
I'm not seeing any, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. So why don't we go to that vote? It does seem like there's at least several board members who would like a site visit. So do I have a motion that we would go ahead and request a formal site visit to this property prior to hearing the formal site plan review?
Yeah, Roger Griffin, I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Bob Dubus will make the second.
Thank you. So let's do a roll call vote. Art Spru,
Art Spru, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. And again, I'll ask for Tom Gagan, but I do not see that he's joined us. So we will schedule a site visit altogether. We'll want to schedule at a time that's mutually convenient for the applicant and the board. And Art Spru, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I think the other thing that we had asked all the board members on the previous application is whether we wanted to, when the formal application comes in, the final application comes in, do we want to have a public hearing associated with that? Or since they have to go before the ZBA with a public hearing, do we need to actually go through that twice for them? That's usually something we ask the question on. I'll defer to you, Catherine.
Yes, no, thank you very much. That's the next question I was going to bring up to the board, and that we should consider and take a formal vote. And Arthur, you've summarized it completely. This application will go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and there will be a public hearing in that context. So the question we have to ask is, do we feel that it also warrants a public hearing in front of the planning board? What I would suggest to the board, you can consider this either way. There will be a public hearing with the Zoning Board of Appeals. If we were to hold a public hearing in addition, I would suggest that it would be more concerned with issues specific to the site plan. So any discussion or comments on that from board members?
Bob Dubus,
Yes.
no public hearing, but a site visit.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that one, Catherine.
All right.
If neighbors or somebody else has an issue that is more of the parking, I'm concerned that the Zoning Board of Appeals may not have the specific remedy in their toolbox. If you can assure me that the Zoning Board of Appeals will be covering not just the apartment and the noise and the other neighbor about, but would also consider that level of citing concern, then I would say we don't need one. But I don't really know whether it does or not.
Yes, I think that would be correct to say that a public hearing held by the planning board would be more concerned, as I mentioned, and I'm suggesting, with issues specific to the site plan, which would include, in the intensity of the occupation of the parking or the ingress and egress, etc. Any other comments from board members regarding a public hearing?
This is Art Spru.
Yeah.
I think Bob Wirtschafter brings up a good point associated with the parking and the vehicular access. I'm not sure the ZBA is going to focus in on that. That to me is a game changer on this site. And if you take a look at the numbers that I threw out there, that's a problem. So I would support for this because of the way they have initiated the layout and the site. I think that a public hearing is going to probably be appropriate for this particular application.
All right. Hands,
Yeah, this is Roger Griffin. Yeah, I think that's right. I think a public I think we should have a public meeting. I do.
all right. And Ben, I see that your hand is up. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, very briefly, Madam Chair. I'm not trying to weigh in on whether or not you should have a public hearing. That's really up for you all to decide. But we've intentionally decided to go through the site plan review process before we go through the zoning process, meaning to do it sequentially, because it became very difficult the last round to be going back and forth between the boards. So we would ask that if the board is going to conduct a public hearing, that we be able to go through the site plan review process, including the public hearing process, and try to come to a final resolution with your board as to whether or not the parking is adequate in your mind. Understanding that when we get to the zoning board, because they do look at traffic impact and safety and adequacy of the site and all those things, I would imagine they are going to look at parking, but they're going to a certain extent, rely on your board, in terms of your expertise, in terms of both layout of the site and utilities and parking and all those things that are important to your board. So I would just ask that if you're going to have a public hearing, that we be able to go through this process before we undertake the zoning process.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. This is Catherine. And just to confirm, in general, that's the standard process that we follow in the town of Chatham, that you would do site plan review first and that public hearing first. So thank you, Ben. So I think we're probably ready for a formal vote by the board as to whether or not we should have a public hearing. We've already voted that we will have a site visit. So may I have a motion that we should have a public hearing regarding this matter for this formal site plan review?
Art Sprue will make that motion.
And may I have a second?
Roger Griffin, I'll second that motion.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Art Sprue,
Art Sprue approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we'll go ahead with a public hearing. And I'll just ask if Tom Gagan has joined us. I'm never giving up hope, but I don't see that he has. So good. So the board has voted. We will do a formal site visit. We will have a public hearing associated with this for the formal site plan review. Before we move on to the next item on our agenda, I'm just going to ask if there's any other comments from board members or Ben or Leslie or Thad, any other comment, any other information that you need from the board in order to go ahead to prepare your formal site plan.
I don't believe that we do, Madam Chair, and I wanted to just get my licks in and say thank you all for I thought a very, very considered first review of this project.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
sorry,
okay,
we
go
will
ahead.
need a motion to accept the pre-application, so I just
Oh, I'm
wanted
so
to give
sorry.
you that
Thank
reminder.
Thank you. Sorry, sorry. I was so anxious to move on. So
Bob
yes,
Dubus will make that motion to accept the preliminary site plan.
thank you.
Bob
And
Wirtschafter seconds. Bob
Great.
Wirtschafter seconds.
great. So let's do a roll call vote. Art Sprue,
Art Sprue approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus approve.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Wirtschafter approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we accept this pre-application for the formal site plan review. Thank you all. Thank you, Ben, Leslie, and Thad. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's go on to the next item on our agenda. And this is the continuation of a public hearing that's still open for a definitive subdivision plan. And this is regarding 79 Forest Beach Road. I understand we have a a request from the applicant to continue this matter to our November 22nd meeting. And I'm wondering, Thad, did you wish to speak to that?
We were just fine tuning, this is Thad Aldridge, by the way. We were just fine tuning some of the details in the plan, and we'll be submitting it this week for the next meeting. Thank you.
Great. All right. So again, we want to do a vote that we approve the continuance of this matter, of this public hearing to the November 22nd Planning Board meeting. May I have a motion to that effect?
Art Sprue will make that motion.
And may I have a second?
Roger Griffin, I'll second the motion.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Art Sprue,
Art Sprue approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus, approve.
Bob Wertschafter,
Bob Wertschafter, approve.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin, approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve that we continue this matter to the November 22nd Planning Board meeting. Thank you, Thad. And so next item is Chairman's comments. And I will just mention that just some points about our schedule for the November 22nd meeting. In addition to continuing the public hearing for 79 Forest Beach Road, we do have scheduled that the Cape Cod Commission will return to us with a revised draft regarding the West Chatham Neighborhood Center zoning, which will integrate some of the comments that have been received from both HBDC as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals. The draft has been presented to those two boards and comments have been received. Katie Donovan and Arthur and I attended those meetings and heard the comments. I understand Cape Cod Commission is preparing a summary and will be able to present them to the planning board, and we'll consider that all together. And so we'll move forward on that matter. I will just mention as well, we're still working on setting up a schedule to meet again with the Airport Commission, Town Council, the FAA consultant, Matt Caron, regarding the issues regarding these runway protection zone and the potential of drafting or having the Airport Commission draft a zoning overlay district that would attend to the needs of the runway protection zone. So there's a lot of issues there that do need to be vetted, a lot of questions that have come up from the board, and we're still working on scheduling that meeting. So we did want to ask the board if you would be amenable to possibly scheduling a special meeting to meet with Town Council, with the Airport Commission, and Matt Caron regarding those issues and questions, just because it's been somewhat difficult to try to organize it to fall on one of our regularly scheduled planning board meetings. So we don't have a date yet, but would you be open or willing to come to another meeting on a different week, potentially a different day of the week, in order to accomplish this? Any comments? Why don't we go through the board? Art, can you let us know how you?
I'm flexible, so it depends, as long as I don't have a conflict with anything else. So I would say if you put a couple of dates out there, I can let you know. And of course, I'm not quite sure what time. Are we still talking 5 o'clock or some other time?
Yeah, yeah. Bob Dubus?
Well, I don't know if my pay grade allows me to do that, but yeah, I'm pretty flexible.
Okay, great. And Bob Wertschafter?
Yeah, I'm after 5 would be probably best in terms of getting conflicts, rid of conflicts. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Roger Griffin?
Yep, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm flexible.
Okay, great. So Katie's been working on that for us. So we'll continue to work on setting up a meeting, and we'll be open to other dates other than our usual meeting dates. And then, of course, she'll check with all of you to see if everyone can attend. Katie, was there anything else I needed to cover in the comments for tonight that we discussed?
No, I don't believe so, Madam Chair. I think you've covered everything.
Okay, So before we move to adjourn the meeting, again, I'll just ask if there's anyone in the public who wanted to make a comment about anything we've covered tonight. You're certainly welcome to do so. And I'll just take a moment to look for any raised hands. I don't see any raised hands. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Bob Dubus, move to adjourn.
Thank you, Bob. Second?
Bob Or Chapter, seconds.
Great. So Art Spru,
Art Sprue, approve.
Bob Dubus,
Bob Dubus more than approves.
Bob Wirtschafter,
Bob Or Chapter approves.
Roger Griffin,
Roger Griffin approve.
and this is Catherine Halpern. I also approve. And again, I don't see that Tom Gagan has joined us. So let's note the time as 5:59 that we're adjourning this meeting. And again, thank you everyone for your participation, and please enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.